Hey guys, this is Phil from undercage.com. This is LG V10. LG said that this is a super premium phone. Well, they actually never said it, but they're advertising like it. And they said that while the G series is sedan, a V series is like an SUV. At the first glance, I never got it, but as I got used to this guy, I kind of get the glimpse of it. So they put everything they could, the gimmicks, the tricks, everything that they could possibly imagine into a phone. So let's get right into it. So it looks very mechanic and heavy and really big. It's just very mechanic and geeky overall. Well, the thing that I like is that it's divided within top, bottom, left, and right. It's very well balanced, which is a very hard thing for an LG phone to find. And it's very well balanced while having a balanced back in the same time. I like the way it feels. And there's a stainless steel 316L, the plate over there, that is going to save your phone from shocks, and when you drop it, it's going to save your screens. Now it's got a mil-spec certified, so it's as sturdy as the Galaxy S6 Active and other rugged phones. Of course, this is not waterproof or dustproof, so don't expect anything like that, but this at least is sturdy. Now those bars that I mentioned actually have a gold plates on it. So these are gold plated, and LG was shy enough to not tell us, but they are. So, but don't really think about taking those off because there's not really much gold onto it anyway. So, and the bag has the DuraSkin, and it's very scratch resistant and gives you a certain grip that this is a phone that's so big and heavy in the same time. It's very likely that this is gonna slip out of your hand, and this grippy bag really saves it from running off your hands. And I really like the way it feels. But unfortunately, I'm not exactly the majority here. When shown with the G4 and the V10, a lot of people, at least around me, chose the G4 over the V10's design. So I guess there's a little bit of taste differences here and there. Now the back keys are getting better. They started off with the G2 and the G3, G4. They were actually getting more balanced and kind of, harmonized into those other surroundings. And V10's back keys are not exactly the best looking ones, but they added a fingerprint reader there, which is the optimum placed. I think at least it's a far better option than having a dedicated fingerprint reader on the front like the HTC did. So there is the front and back and overall design. Now the display has a very sharp colors, a punchy color. It's not exactly the brightest panel in here, but as a QHD resolution, and it's got a great color to it. It's not exactly an entirely accurate color gamut there, but I like the way it feels. It's not exactly oversaturated like the Galaxy S2 era AMOLEDs, but it's punchy in a good way. Outside legibility is really good, especially they added they borrowed a function from Samsung. They added one starting from the Galaxy S5 Active. When the sunlight is too bright there, the ambient sensor recognizes it, and it's going to saturate the screen a lot, so it's a lot easier for you to read. And they adopted that function, and it's there and very useful. Now, the second display is another thing. They've been boasting about it a lot, but this is not exactly a second display. Technically, it's a one panel of display with the cut out left edge there, left top edge. So this is always on, so you can get the notification whether you turn the screen on or not. You can turn that off totally, but entirely, but they're there, and you can scroll left to get to those little toolbar there, so you can turn on your flashlight, get into camera, and change your volume settings on the fly. So it does that, and when the screen is on, it gets you a lot of different things, including the full screen notification is one of my favorites, and it lets you multitask through the apps only by tapping those icons. I found that a lot more useful and easier than the traditional way of multitasking there. So that, and the interface-wise, they utilize the whole camera there. So on the camera app, they utilize the extra screen there so it doesn't block your preview screen. Not a lot of apps do that, especially even the LG's dedicated app. The calendar doesn't really support it. I think the calendar views here, day, week, month, year, agenda, should fit in there, and it's going to look great if we can toggle from there. But I guess that's just a choice of making multitasking easier, because it's going to hide the multitasking bar if they did that. But not a lot of apps are fully utilizing it. That's what I think about it. So I think LG or the app developers should put more efforts into it to make it useful. But overall, it was actually kind of good. Now you might worry that if it's always on, it's going to be wasting a lot of battery. LG has worried about that too because, no, actually they haven't been, because from the G3 they had the case called the quick circle case, and that was wasting battery like crazy by turning the whole backlight unit on, even when lighting just a little portion of the screen, because the traditional backlight units can't do that. But this guy has the local dimming that you see on televisions, and only on the right top side of the LED is lit up, so it doesn't waste that much of the battery. It still is not as energy efficient as the AMOLED panels are, but it's far better than you would expect. Now to the call quality. As an LG device, the call quality is actually okay, because a lot of them are just bad. But we can't really say that for sure, because the G4 had a good call quality from the beginning, and then as the time went by, we were starting to get the drop calls, and the call quality was getting worse. So we can't really say that for sure for an extended term, but for the first few weeks, the call quality is actually pretty good. They added up a 32-bit DAC there, which doesn't really support the 32-bit playback. We don't know why, because when you hear about the 32-bit DAC, you think that you can play 32-bit files. But it can play up to 24-bit files, and what it can do is it can upscale those files into 32-bit quality, which doesn't really mean that it's in 32 bits. But anyway, on top of that, they added up a 75 levels of volume control. So that's definitely a good thing. If you don't like it, you can just turn it off. But it seems like not all the apps support that. While LG's own and the Google Play Music supported it, some of the third-party apps, including some video apps, didn't support it. So even if it turned your hi-fi DAC, it remained the same with the sound. So I guess there's some work for the developers to do. They included a nice little packaging with the Quad B3 tuned by AKG, which we think is totally something to boast about, but they didn't. So this is what it looks like, and it's in the fabric cable and the gold controller. It's not metal, it's just plastic. And it sounds actually pretty good as a bundle. You can't really expect anything above that, but it sounds pretty good, and it seems like they put some effort on it, but we can't really see a difference between the Quad B3 without the AKG tune and the with the AKG tune, and it's a bit sharp to my ears, but you know, sound is really a subjective matter, so just don't take my words for granted. Now, the camera-wise, the rear camera actually takes a pretty good pictures. LG G4 did take a good picture, and so does the LG V10. Especially, it's got the manual control that was introduced with the LG G4. They're still there. You can control your focus, pretty much everything. And they added up a little neat feature, manual video, the Pro Video, so you can turn your microphone with more centric to the back or the front, control the microphone volume. You can even connect your Bluetooth headset to use that as an external microphone. You can control everything, almost literally. And the thing is that who exactly is going to be taking this hardcore video on a phone? I'm not really sure, but it's always better to have a function that you're not going to use than to be not able to use because you don't have a function at all. So I guess that's not something to complain about. Another thing that LG has added up here is another camera there. On top of the two screens, they added up the two camera. So if you face the front, there's a selfie and there's a goofy camera. So it's essentially a wider angle front-facing camera. What I wonder is that having a wider angle camera is good. It's definitely good. But can't you just crop out the wider angle camera to make a narrow angle shots? I'm not really sure. If the resolution is high enough, I don't really see why that would be a bad call, and rather than having two built-in cameras. But I don't know. LG must have been trying to save their prices on the cameras, but they added up too, so there must be a reason. Now, the performance-wise, it's got a Snapdragon 808 processor. It's not the best performing processor, but considering the Snapdragon 810 and its heat problems, I guess the 808 is the best call for now. And what I like about the V10 is that it finally controlled the heat management. Now, LG's heat management has been bad, even with the Snapdragon 400, 410, and even 210s. And finally, they're getting the heat controls, and it doesn't get any hotter than just a mediocre temperature there. The backside does generate some heat, but not to the level that is gonna get uncomfortable. And on top of that, one of the welcome changes here is that screen throttle is totally gone. Because of the heat management problems, when you set your LG phones into 100% of the brightness, it usually is throttled it down forcefully to 80 or 70% automatically. It doesn't do that anymore. I haven't seen my screen brightness falling down with this guy at all. Now, there are some performance restrictions because of the throttling, throttling happening there, but it's not going to impact your performance in any major situation unless you're playing 3D gaming the full time. I was fine with that, but you might be able to feel something if you're a hardcore gamer. They were generous enough to include the 64GB of storage, which you can expand up to a lot. I think that was the maximum was 2 terabytes, but the LG is for the limited time giving out 200GB of micro SD card, and you can expand that further, so that's a good thing. 64GB of internal storage is definitely a welcome thing. And I'm glad enough that the LG didn't take out the RR Blaster there. Samsung and HTC has been taking those out in the latest phones, but LG decided to keep it. And since I still haven't found my remote controller for my tele in my room, that's definitely a welcome thing there. Now, the software-wise, one of the good things that I found was that the small screen is back. So it gives you a better one-handed operation, so you can just swipe from the navigation bar there, and it's going to shrink your screen so you can control it with your one hand. And one of the things that I really liked about the LG was their own browser. Their browser was really rich in the functions. You can scroll to top or bottom with your 2 finger gestures, and you could have just taken the long screenshot that Galaxy Note 5 is really promoting about. They have been built in on the LG browser for a very long time. They took it out and replaced it with Google Chrome. I mean, I like Chrome. Chrome is a good browser. It's not a good browser, but I like it. But, you know, you don't have to take your browser out. I don't know why they did that. That was the essence of the LG interface. But they did that, so now that's gone. I really don't have anything to talk about this. It's okay, it's got material design, but everybody else do. And one of the things that I was really disappointed is that dual Windows still supports this little apps. Aside from LG's own and the Google's a little bit of here and there, it supports like 3 third-party apps. That's still very lacking. I don't know if it's LG's fault or developer's fault, but they got to do something. And Q-Slide over here is even limited and not even supporting all the LG apps. So it's been like that for a long time now. They should do something. I really didn't want to get this far, but LG Health is nothing but just a pedometer. Pedometer and this tracker I was expecting, like it tracks, but then it only tracks with your pedometer. Walking, running, cycling, sometimes with GPS, hiking, and inline skating. That's it. Compared to S Health and other health-centric apps on the other manufacturers, that's definitely a lacking feature there. Now finally to the battery life. This has a 3000 milliamps of battery, which was long before on the LG G2 tradition. And since it was coming to LG G3 and the G4 and the V10, the battery capacity remains the same. And as a 5.7 inches of a QHD display and 4 GB of RAM equipped device, 3000 milliamps doesn't sound enough, and it definitely isn't enough. With the power savings all off, I got into about 340 minutes to 4 hours and 20 minutes of the screen on time on the normal usage as my daily driver, and that's definitely not enough for a phone this big and heavy. The only reason that I'm not really saying anything harsh about it is because the previous Galaxy S6 and the Galaxy S6 Edge had as bad of a battery life as V10. That's the only reason why I'm not saying anything harsh on it. But even with the replaceable battery, having a 3 and 40 hours on a 5.7-inch phone this big is definitely a disappointment. Even iPhone 6s Pluses go further than this. So, with all that, we now run into a conclusion. What is this? Essentially, this is like a really, really geeky phone. This is a geeky and very everything that you can possibly expect kind of thing. I personally think that this should have been a G Pro 3 instead of a V10 new lineup. But so essentially, this is a G Pro 3 with a bad battery. Now, who would like this? A guy like me, geeks, would definitely love this. I like this. But is it recommendable? I'm not really sure. At the same price as the Galaxy S6, I would definitely recommend Galaxy S6 over V10 to a whole majority of people. The thing is, geeky phones don't really sell well. Geeky phones, niche market phones don't really sell well. And what I'm really sorry to hear about is that it seems like LG is counting a lot on this guy. Sorry, but geeky phones don't sell well. Don't really push it that hard. So it's a good phone. I like it, but would I recommend it to you? Hardly, unless you're a geek. So here is the very geeky and very sturdy, mil-spec certified, that's geeky, G Pro 3, the LG V10. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll come back later with the other videos soon, so stay tuned. Bye.